I once commented on one of Little Light Studios' videos that I was surprised that they hadn't gone full satanic panic and made a video about Dungeons and Dragons. I think they took that as a challenge, so here we are. A little bit of background on these guys so we all know what we're dealing with going forward. Little Light Studios is a young earth creationist ministry that focuses on popular culture. They don't watch or play anything that they talk about ever and make a concerted effort to convince people that all entertainment is a tool of Satan. Yeah, that's what we're dealing with.
So are you really going to hell for playing Dungeons and Dragons?
No, because it isn't real. Before I go further, I need to touch on a couple of things. So, full disclosure, there are entire swaths of this video that I just cut out, and I will explain why. I made 3 passes over the original video. The first pass, I cut out all citations about the Bible and the discussions around it. I did that for a couple of reasons. First of all, even without them referencing it, we are all going to be made aware that they think it's evil, so we don't need the tangential jerking themselves off for Jesus. The second reason I cut all that is because I don't care what the Bible says at all, and I never have. And I don't feel the need to wade through or listen to that nonsense because it isn't targeted at me. It's targeted to their already believing audience. The second pass, I kept it down to whatever was pertinent to the main points I want to discuss. That they don't know anything about the game, and the idea that playing D&D will hurt you no matter what in some way, no matter who is playing or running the game. The third pass was a refinement of the last step, and I managed to get this down to something approaching a reasonable time.
How many of you are familiar with role-playing games in general?
I know of them.
Have you ever played a role-playing game?
A little bit.
If you have played Zelda or even Mario, you have played a role-playing game. If you are playing the role of some character in the game, that is a role-playing game. Odds are good that they have all played an RPG, but don't know any better.
Well, what do you know about it?
There's dice.
Okay.
A dice with like 20 sides or something.
Yeah, this is true.
Very good. Yes, there are dice, and there are even dice with 20 sides. This cannot be all you've heard about the game. So what else, guys? Come on, you can do it. It would be easier not to sound completely clueless if you had looked at the player's handbook or the Dungeon Master's Guide.
The imagery is very sadistic.
And a hard slide into satanic imagery. Are you guys looking at the cover of the DMG with the Beholder or something in the Monster Manual? I don't know, because you never show us what you're looking at. This seems to me to be a way to prime their audience. Nothing is more terrifying than whatever the imagination drags up. That's why it's used to build suspense, and why even ancient epics like Beowulf don't describe Grendel in any detail. The person listening to or reading the story is allowed to imagine how it looks because that is what they are afraid of or what would be intimidating to them. By not showing what they are talking about, their audience is probably thinking of drunken blood orgies or human sacrifices.
I just always seen kids in their basement playing it, and they're talking about leveling up their character and everything.
Yeah, leveling up is a game mechanic. It's in most every game now. It gives you a goal to unlock more and better abilities, and those gains allow you to take on bigger and more threatening things. Staying at low levels can be fun, but you can only throw so many orcs at your players before it gets boring. Higher level play puts you up against Onis, Beholders, and at the highest levels, things like Liches, Solars, and Pit Fiends come up as things you may stand a chance of beating. But it's gonna be a fight for sure to take one down, and you're probably gonna need to have special equipment to even stand a chance.
All right, so I'm going to give you a little history. Have you ever heard of the Satanic Panic from the 80s?
No.
Yes.
No. Okay,
Yeah.
so that was big in the 80s. People like went crazy over it, specifically this game. People were really jumping on this and saying this is actually really damaging to society.
There is no way that even one of you haven't heard of this Satanic Panic, especially given the comments you get and the content you make. The Satanic Panic was a time when religious idiots got bent out of shape over things like D&D and metal and everything else that was popular in the 80s. Stupid people were trying to drag us into the Dark Ages again over stuff that was literally harmless.
It is a fantasy role-playing game that teaches demonology, witchcraft.
Okay, so these are some of the things that are included in the game.
The next item on the list is voodoo, before it cuts to these morons running their mouths again. I found the footage they are referencing, and I see this as further proof that they have not ever played the game or talked to anyone that has. This is again from the 80s and is subject to the bias of the time. But regardless, we're going to go through this. First, we have demonology, the idea that you can summon demons or be enthralled by them. Setting aside the fact that demons do not exist, there is no section in the player's handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, or the Monster Manual that will tell you how to summon such beings in reality. For instance, let's take a look at the spell Planar Binding. This does not tell you at all how to summon and bind anything to you. It just says that you do as a game mechanic. No step-by-step process, and there is absolutely no expectation that you will actually summon and bind any of these creatures in reality. Next, we have Witchcraft and Voodoo. Both are magic, which again doesn't exist, but as we see from the spell stat block, doesn't give you any magic words or hand gestures to work with at all.
People think, it's just a game. Why are you guys making such a big deal about a game? And it's like, no, it's a game about murder and rape.
Murder and sexual assault. There is no section in any edition of D&D that advocates doing such things. You, at best, are killing monsters and enemies. Each table is different in how explicit the players and DM are, and I have heard stories about such things, but they are the exception rather than the rule. That's going to come up again in a moment.
You're putting these themes in something made for children. Why aren't they thinking like that?
Because that is not what is happening. I need to talk about a DM tool here called Lines and Veils. Lines are subjects, themes, or even creatures that should not even be broached as elements in the game, period. I know someone that does not want to play in a campaign with mind flayers. If they were playing in a game I ran, I would adjust encounters accordingly. That is a line for that individual. Veils are a kind of narrative fade to black. We all know what is happening, but it isn't described and narrated in detail. I am not going to run a campaign for children the same way or with the same themes I would run for adults. There would be a lot of changes I would make, and Curse of Strahd is a good example of this. For children, it would be an age-appropriate vampire hunt. For adults, it's going to be a much grittier game. As the DM, it is your job to tailor the story to your group. Is there a topic that makes them slightly uncomfortable? That would be a veil. Is there something that would make them absolutely terrified? That is a line. The goal is to have fun, and if a player is not having fun and is made to feel extremely uncomfortable in real life, then that is something that needs to be removed or retooled in-game to fix that. That said, no table I have ever played at or ran as the DM includes those elements as a cornerstone of the game. My players make it a point to fight against such things, not do them. If you have a group of murder hobos, the DM controls the world and has the ability to curtail such behavior in covert or overt ways. If they are ripping apart the game world, it's a living, breathing world. The DM can have suitable consequences, like having another band of adventurers come after the party, or set a bounty, or they won't be able to do business in certain towns because they aren't welcome anymore. Those are tools that a DM can use to prevent such behavior.
I think the attributes of this are not bad. Imagining with your friends, like kids pretend and they play stories, and it's almost like these kids are getting together and they want to write a story together. Like, hey, let's write a book together.
You're getting it now, though you won't stick with that idea. D&D is a collaborative story. The DM has the plot and main story beats, and the players just do what they do. Sometimes they go off the plot line and the DM has to adjust. My first time as a DM was a one-shot. My wife had just finished watching The Legend of Vox Machina and was curious about the game now that she had seen a story from D&D translated into film media. So I put together a quick game. I had to improvise a character pretty quickly because she went to check on a business she had as part of her backstory, but it was a successful game. We had nothing but a dry erase board and magnets for minis. But after that, she was all in. She had a blast, and we're currently playing through a more permanent campaign after we played through a module or two for a bit. Now they're looking at a video from Vox about D&D, but I found most of it was just them not paying attention. This bit in particular showed me that they have never even opened the player's handbook or have any idea what they're talking about.
Listen to as they create. Each person is supposed to create a character.
Creating a hero. Before you can start adventuring in D&D, you need to create your very own hero. Using the D&D handbook, you pick a race, human, elf, dwarf, etc., and you pick a class, basically your job. Fighter, wizard, rogue.
I play Amelia, human warlock.
One Shoe, rock gnome, sorcerer.
I play Isla, druid, elf.
Harriet, tiefling, rogue.
Blaze, dragonborn, paladin.
Dude,
Okay.
every character is a witch of some sort. Sorcerer,
Warlock, which is a male witch.
Oh, fuck's sake. No. A D&D warlock is not a male witch. Looking at the player's handbook, we see that a warlock is someone that has their magic loaned to them from a patron, which can be anything from an angel to fucking Cthulhu. Also, not all of them are casters. For instance, there's a rogue in the party. Rogues don't usually have access to any magic. I also noticed that they made no mention at all of the paladin, a literal holy warrior that can bring the divine smite, expending spell slots for extra radiant damage on attack rolls. But of course they ignore that and focus on the warlock. As annoying as it is to watch these guys go on about this nonsense, the main thing I want to talk about is how role-playing affects people. So let's get to that.
There is scientific medical journals that talk about the use of role-playing in behavior modification therapy.
Wow.
Listen to this. Role-playing may be also used to instruct clients how to perform a newly acquired behavior. I'm just going to let you sit and marinate on that.
Yeah, right.
Or to engage in a behavior or a given context. Therefore, role-playing is an example of behavioral reversal in behaviors that are repeated or acted out until they become part of the individual's behavior repertoire. So check this out. Other medical journals right here, abstract. This paper reported that a scenario-based learning approach in teaching and of counseling skills. So this is really, this article was aimed at teaching the teachers and the role playing that can play out in that. And this paper explores the use of role playing for undergraduate training, its usefulness and ambiguity and uncertainty can be incorporated into scripts for more effective training.
Now I know that ran for a little bit longer than you probably were willing to tolerate, and it was hard to find places to cut it down, but it all boils down to the same thing. Basically, they are equating learning a skill like CPR via role-playing or anger management skills via role-play to learning magic or summoning demons in Dungeons & Dragons. One side of this has real-world application, and the other does not. That isn't to say that you can't learn anything from D&D or benefit from it in some tangible way. For example,
what may be surprising is that for many, it's become a therapeutic tool, teaching social skills to children, helping people in prisons, and even serving as an escape for people in the military.
I do a lot of USO tours, so I travel all over the world saying thank you to the men and women protecting our country. And I've been in multiple deployments where, like, because people now know I'm part of the community, come up to me like, dude, we're running this campaign in the middle of a war zone or you're protecting our country. And you're like, there are days that it's down, you don't go to a movie, you're forward deployed. So it's awesome.
Pittsburgh Children's Hospital. It's amazing watching the kids jump out of themselves and into another character. They got to leave their own troubles and bodies behind. I think it's like an incredible tool in that way.
I've seen it help friends of mine with PTSD. I've had it help me. I had a very bad experience. I was in a shootout, and it was a fatal shooting. And it was in a very public place, and I couldn't really get out of that situation. And to come home and play D&D with my friends, like, made it normal. When you have something really traumatic happen to you, and you can just not be you for 2 to 4 hours, that's like hitting a reset button. Because D&D had nothing to do with this horrible thing that happened.
I feel so passionately about Dungeons & Dragons because it healed me. I went through some really intense childhood trauma. I'll be very specific. So my father molested me from 8 until 17. And so I was making a character who was strong and confident, and I would defeat the monsters, and really I was trying to defeat him. I couldn't get out of it, but it gave me the willpower to, like, you know, try to protect my brother and sister and to protect my friends, and gave me that, like, hero complex on the inside, and that little seed grew and made me become the woman I am today.
Before I got back into D&D, I've had a terrible pastime. Like, everybody kept downgrading me, kept telling me I was worthless, useless. I didn't know where to go with my life, and I thought to myself I was just gonna end it all. But my best friend and good bro of mine, he recommended that I go see Critical Role and see what they do. It started making sense and made me happy and started making me think about what I can do. Instead of saying I can't, it says, how can I change my life? And because of that, I'm here today. I'm enjoying the living crap out of myself, and cosplaying is fun, so.
Yes, you can learn a lot from D&D. Getting attached to a character with the possibility of that character meeting an untimely end makes you consider your actions, your plans, and how you impact the world you play in more. That isn't even considering trauma and sickness that people can deal with in a safe environment, allowing them to address it or escape it to be what they want to be the heroes they want to be, and to tell their story. These morons ignore that in favor of this idiocy.
The witchcraft, the demonism, the spells.
This is nothing but fear-mongering. Kicking at something they don't understand and acting like playing D&D will damn you to hell. This kind of idiocy is what we're up against, and it should be answered and corrected. No, you are not going to hell for playing D&D. You are telling a story. Your story. Don't let these idiots tell you that you can't tell a story. Tell your story and play your game.